Why do we do what it is that we do? Who in his right mind would fast a whole 30 days or 29 days, no food, no water, no nothing, from sunrise to sunset? Who in his right mind will do this? Unless and except there is what? There's a reward. What is the reward for the believer? What pushes us, my brothers and sisters? What makes us do what we do? What makes us put up with the things that we put up with? What makes you bite your fingers in a moment where you would have loved to snap? In general, there's three things. For some of us, we do what we do out of fear of the day of judgment. And this isn't right or wrong. I'm not here to say what's right and wrong. I'm just generally explaining what pushes some of us. For some of us, the fear of the day of judgment is too much for him to bear, too much for her to bear, so therefore she does whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, because the thought of that day is just beyond comprehension. And rightly so. What is the day of judgment? What is it? Wallahi, my brothers and sisters, it's not a joke. Even companions feed. Prophets shook in their boots. They were shaking in their boots of that day. Imagine prophets. Imagine Abu Bakr. Let's speak about the best of the best. Imagine Abu Bakr, a companion whom the Prophet of Allah said what? He says he's the best. He says to his companions, every one of you who did me a favor, I paid back that favor. Except for Abu Bakr, I can't pay him back. Allah will pay him back on the day of judgment. This isn't Wallah Shaykh Abu Tanki. The Prophet of Allah is testifying that this man, I can't pay him. Allah will pay him on the day of judgment. He says, I brought Islam to every one of you, and every one of you buckled for a moment except Abu Bakr. He accepted it immediately. He says, every door to my masjid is to be closed except the door of Abu Bakr. That door remains open. He says, Abu Bakr, for you, the 8 doors of Jannah will be begging for you to walk through them. This man who was promised Jannah countless times, he says, I wish I was dust and I wasn't Abu Bakr, who has to stand before Allah on the day of judgment and be held accountable for the things I've done. Yeah, this is... He says, I wish. He looked at a bird in one narration. He looked at a bird and he flew away. He says, oh, how I wish I was you. Because when you die, you become dust. I mean, if the best of the best is saying, I wish I was that, and I wasn't who I am, who has to stand before Allah on that day, what do you think this leaves for the rest of us? The Prophet of Allah, he says about that day, he says it's a day that is 50,000 years long. How long? 50,000. Not our time. For verily one day with Allah is equivalent to 1,000 years of our days. 50,000 years. In a day where he says confusion, Allah says people will be running around like they're intoxicated, like they're drunk. But by Allah, they're not drunk. But the severity of that day is too much. He says, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you'll be resurrected, naked, uncircumcised, barefooted. So when Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, when she heard this, she says, O Prophet of Allah, are you telling me that I'm going to be standing naked and other people can see me? Look at the haya of these women. Look at the haya of your mothers. This was her concern. A Prophet of Allah, are people going to see me? He says to Aisha, the severity of that day is far greater than people having a purr at one another. It's too much. He says the sun on that day, my brothers, will be 1 mile above your heads. The companion that narrated the hadith, he says, by Allah, I did not know what the Prophet of Allah was referring. Did he mean a mil, meaning the distance of a mile? Or was he referring to the Arabs used to put eyeliner with a little stick, and this stick was referred as a mil? The sisters will probably know it. You know that they buy it from Hajj, that little stick. This to the Arabs was known as a mil. The companion says, I didn't know which one was he referring to. Did he mean the distance of this little stick? Or was he referring to the distance of actually a mile? Nevertheless, imagine the sun is 1 mile above your heads, my brothers and sisters. On a day when there is no shade except His shade, Azza wa Jal. The Prophet of Allah, he says, each one of you according to his sins and according to his deeds. Each one of us will be sweating. And some of us, our sweat will reach our ankles. And some to our knees. Some to our waists. Some to our necks. And some will be drowning in our own sweat. Some of us will be drowning in our own sweat. On that day, my brothers and sisters, you will see how Allah will bring justice between animals. Animals. He will bring an animal that had a broken horn and one that had 2 horns, and the one with the 2 horns, he put it on the one with the broken horn, so Allah will give him his right on that day. Then he'll turn him into dust. Even the kuffar on that day, they will say, oh, how we wish we were what? Turab. They're actually going to wish that they were animals and that they were not human beings who now have to be held accountable. This is the severity of that day. So for some of us, my brothers, hearing about the day of judgment is too much. So some people, what? They pull up. They fall into line. People start doing whatever it is that they have to do. They'll be like, Allah, this day of judgment thing, I can't handle it. And some of us, we're a bit more staunch than that, you know. Day of judgment, it's a breeze. Some of us, what works for us is hellfire. Some of us, when we hear about hellfire, wallahi. And some of us, for some reason, we have this funny understanding of hellfire. Some of us, we have this. It's not so much that it's a pretty picture of Jahannam, but yani, how bad is it, bro? So like our Sunday barbecue, shall we? And then, wallahi, my brothers, hellfire was enough. Hellfire was enough to bring the greatest men of our ummah down to their knees, man. The Prophet of Allah, he tells us that hellfire on the day of judgment, will be brought forward in front of all of humanity. It's going to be dragged forward in front of all of humanity. And he says on that day it will be dragged by 70,000 ropes. And on each rope, my brother and my sister, there will be 70,000 angels on each rope. Do the maths. 4.9 billion angels will be dragging hellfire. 4.9 billion angels will be dragging hellfire in front of humanity. And then when hellfire sees the disbelievers and sees the sinners for the first time, hellfire will burst. It will actually burst out of anger and frustration. And when it bursts, every one of those 4.9 billion angels will actually let go of the ropes out of fear. Every single living creature will fall to its knees out of fear. And Allah will say, get up. Today is not the day of prostration. Today is the day of punishment and judgment. The Prophet of Allah, he says the minimum, you know what the minimum? Yani the best bloke in Jahannam, the best, the wali of them, the most loved to Allah in Jahannam, is a man who will be made to stand on 2 burning coals, and his brain will be boiling from the heat, and this man would think that he's copying the worst punishment. But little does he know, he thinks he's copying the worst. The Prophet of Allah, he says, he actually has it the best in there. We're talking about a place, my brothers and sisters, there is no air conditioning. There is no dancing and music and hanging out. This is a place, I want you to imagine, you know what, don't use your imagination. I want you to imagine the one who's perfect by nature, the one who is supreme by nature, the one who when he creates to absolute perfection. You know what, forget this. I want you to imagine this. Maybe this for the boys, it sinks in a little bit more. I want you to imagine, Malish, forgive me, I know the sisters downstairs, but let's just be real, yeah? I want you to imagine one of the boys here now. You come home. Yeah? You come home. And when you come home, you come to the front door, I mean, you realize, you know what? The front door's open, man. What the hell's going on? You walk into your house, only to see your wife, your little 2-3-year-old daughter, your whole family was butchered. Not only they were butchered, they were raped. Not only were they raped, khalas, imagine the worst of the worst. Ghadab beyond ghadab, beyond ghadab. And all this was done by one man. And then you actually find the man in the house. And you get your hands on him. And I know maybe for some of us, because maybe it's not in our nature, you feel like, you know what, I'm not the one who's violent. I want you to imagine you actually grab the bloke and you physically can put it on him. Yeah, you physically can overpower the man. And now I want you to imagine there is no law. And I want you to imagine that you can do whatever you want to him and you will not be held accountable, you will not be held responsible. Let the most creative man here tell me, what would you do to this guy? Wallahi, whatever you think of, every single one of us collectively, it's rubbish, because we're human beings, we have defects, we have shortcomings, we are imperfect by nature. Whatever you're going to possibly imagine is nothing. Imagine Allah, the King of Kings, the one who's perfect by nature, designs a place to do nothing but punish. He designed it to do nothing but punish. What do you think it's going to be like, bro? You think it's going to be like robes? You think it's going to be like your Sunday night barbecue with the family? He designed it to punish Azza wa Jal. So some of us, when we hear this, Allahu Akbar, we buckle. So we what? We straighten up. And then, my brothers and sisters, there are some of us, we worship Allah not out of fear of the Day of Judgment, not out of the fear of hellfire, but we do what we do out of the love and the longing and the wanting of His Jannah.